Greetings. I'm Craig DeRoche, the CEO of Family Policy Alliance, and today is a really special day. I have a wonderful guest in Victoria Cobb. We're going to talk about, folks, you might have heard about these things because it's been 4 years running. The bathroom wars, folks, in Northern Virginia. Largely, people said that this war actually produced an outcome. It helped elect Governor Glenn Youngkin in 2021. Folks, they're doing the exact same playbook on the left, the exact same way, and trying to hurt the exact same families. This time, though, it's not statewide because we have a wonderful governor there in Glenn Youngkin. It's 5 school districts that are disregarding President Trump, the American Constitution, the civil rights of these children that should be afforded a childhood rather than being sexualized and trained to attend these parties we're learning about that these people go to. With me is Victoria Cobb, a board member to Family Policy Alliance, also the long serving president of the Family Foundation in Virginia, one of our largest and most impactful family policy councils. Victoria, it's a privilege to be with you today. Thank you for taking time.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you sometimes they say front lines, Victoria, and they don't mean front lines, but you're the front lines in a person and in a organization. The Family Foundation in Virginia. You got kicked out of a restaurant 3 years ago for believing in the Bible, and that was their official press release, quotes was because you read the Bible, you're not allowed to eat food there. You've been raked over every coal you can rake over, but you've kind of won this debate politically. So that's my first question. Why are they taking the 15% issue instead of the 85% issue in Virginia? How's your life looking in this campaign cycle? How you doing out there?
Yeah, there's no question that we were on the front end of saying these trans issues were harmful to our kids. And because we said these things and have been saying these things, that we've certainly taken some heat for it. And yes, sometimes been kicked out of a restaurant and so forth. But it is coming to pass that the American people and the Virginians, our state too, absolutely agree with us. In fact, I just looked the other day and I think in Virginia, we're sitting at about 73% that don't want boys in girls' sports. And that is probably a low number, even nationally. I'm hearing even higher numbers. And so it's crazy to think that there is still a political party and a lot of candidates that are hanging on to this issue, in some ways trying to dodge the issue, but they're certainly hanging on. And there are schools, entire school systems holding on to this idea that biological boys should still be allowed on sports in locker rooms and in other places. And as we said when this came up the first time, when this started happening, and it started with our previous governor, Governor Northam, put in bad policies. And we said these policies will harm children. And sure enough, they looked at us like we were crazy. And then come to pass, we in fact did have assault in bathrooms because you know what? Guess what? Bad people take advantage of bad policies. And that doesn't necessarily even mean they're trans. And it just literally means you make an invitation for trouble, you're going to get trouble. And that's what's happened in Virginia. And so thankfully, we got out of that whole mess. To your point, a great governor in Governor Youngkin. Parents matter, parents' rights, what they want for their kids became sort of the mantra. And that has set the tone for his 4 years. We've fixed a lot of those policies at the state level, but still have schools and political candidates bucking everything that is good for kids.
Well, this is fascinating because they're playing this out, folks, at a really important time in American history. It's a huge privilege for me to have you on here today, Victoria, and to be able to talk about our thriving movement that you've helped lead as a national voice as well, where we have 40 state organizations that are out there in the front lines, family policy councils that we need you out there supporting. If you want to know what they do, it's what you heard in 2021 when you heard somebody had called out an infrastructure of a governor candidate, probably had 20 million more dollars than Glenn Youngkin, and said, "We think that you think that the government union should raise your kids. We think that parents should raise their kids," and they didn't have an answer for that. That's what a family policy council does. We brought that to question. We changed the trajectory of that election, but more importantly, we changed the trajectory of the Republican Party for the following 4 years. They became more socially conservative. They became more responsive to parents, Victoria. I don't think that that's a a bold statement, and I don't think that's one that I need to cite a lot of facts on. We've gotten stronger since 2021 as Americans on these issues. It started in Virginia. Tell us about what it's like to be a family policy council that gets that win and what it's like to have to defend that 4 years later when people think it's a permanent victory. Is it a permanent victory or is the left just dust off and come right back at you?
100%. These things have to be fought for every single day because the left is tireless. And sometimes our side does tend to think, oh, we won. Let's go home and go back to raising our family and kind of forgetting that these ugly things happen in our society where there are these contentious issues. But in fact, it pops back up in your school board. It pops back up at the state level. And in Virginia, because we won a governor's race, that was fantastic. But the governor is not the dictator in Virginia. We still have a legislature that was liberal. And so he could change the policies to some degree from the executive, but we still have not passed a law like so many of the other great family policy councils across the country have passed. Do no harm, save girls sports, these bills that protect our girls. We have not passed a statewide law that way. He's given better guidelines for school boards. Many school boards have complied, so we're getting there. And he appointed a very strong board of health. So we actually just in the last couple of weeks, our board of health has moved forward and said, okay, we can set regulations around girls' sports because it is harmful to girls. And so we're about to kind of watch them go through the process of regulating it, even though they couldn't get a state law. So good things happening. But again, we're a 4-year state. We get a one-term governor. We don't get to, have 4 more years where Governor Youngkin could work with maybe a more friendly legislature. We're back up in an election right now. And people forget that all of this could be undone by the very next governor. Furthermore, we have an entire House of Delegates up for election. So our opportunity to get something moving in the legislature is here and now this year. And so we are constantly out there reminding people we have both a family foundation nonprofit and then also a 504. And so we literally have our more political side of what we do, knocking doors, targeting specific voters that probably agree with us, certainly on these Save Girls Sports kind of issues, but they aren't necessarily ones that think to come out every single election year. Virginia, every year is an election year. So if we don't get these people out voting, then we will see all this work undone and we won't get to continue to see the progress. And so these issues are ripe and we're seeing them because they're super hot in Northern Virginia school boards. Our governor candidates are being expected to weigh in on them as they should to tell Virginians, where am I going to take the Commonwealth when I take over? Because I think Virginia parents really want to know.
So let me take your frustration there. And it was a pleasant way to express your frustration and amplify it, folks. This was solved in 2021, right? We demonstrated this, the public opinion, everybody kind of acknowledged it. And yet they're still trying to do the same thing. And we're faced with a state that might go back into control of people that want to harvest your kids and put them on a pathway, their entire life trajectory toward this slavery of sexual whatever, that they want to do to kids. And you can stop that. And Victoria's saying it's just Virginia for now. And that's okay for this year. It's New Jersey too, to say the governor's race. But part of our philosophy, and I know you're going to know what I'm doing here, Victoria, is that's on all of us. It's on me here in Michigan, where I was a Speaker of the House, and I've tolerated at least 40% of my evangelical Christian neighbors complaining about, McAuliffe down in Virginia, complaining about Kamala Harris, but being unwilling to vote in every election where we live. Right? We say, you know what? I voted for Donald Trump in 2024 and it worked. And now I expect things to be fixed. Well, they're only going to be fixed. There's probably been 2 elections where you live since then for your school boards and your city councils and the stuff that actually matter where you live. So we're not going to talk about those races, but I want to talk about your participation. If you're in Virginia right now, you know the stakes and you're going to hear it from Victoria and I. We just said, you need to be there. And guess what? If you're listening to me and you go to church every week with your family and you raise them in a church, you vote approximately the same as the Medicaid recipients. You vote less often than the LGBTQ voting list. You vote a heck of a lot less often than the Second Amendment voting people do. So we need you to listen to me. I'm criticizing you. I'm making fun of you. And I'm saying in preference, I'm saying it in a nicer way to you because we're talking about the talents, right? We're talking about the bag of gold, depending on the version you read of the Bible, that God's going to come to you and say, you're a Caesar. I gave you the country. I gave you that school district in Virginia. What'd you do with it? We have an answer for that. But you have to go to the Family Foundation of Virginia today. You have to work with Christians Engaged to get your reminder to vote. That's all that is. It's a civics reminder to vote that gives a 92% turnout rate of people that get that reminder. What is your hope, and can we manually alter the turnout again this year for Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, we do go back to sort of the record we have with knocking these doors and texting these voters and realizing that 4 years ago, that margin of victory, for example, in our attorney general's race, is the margin of voters that we were able to turn out. And so, literally, it matters all this work. And so, we are trying to see that happen again this year. And really, the interest level is just starting to ramp up on our governor's race, even though we're a couple weeks off of early voting starts just around the corner. I mean, we are right there, but people are sort of ho hum. They really are in many areas kind of going, another election. Virginia always has an election. So we have to get these folks, our friends and neighbors, to care. And we're starting to tell them about reasons why they have to care. I mean, people are beginning to hear about the mess with Northern Virginia school districts. And they're aware that this isn't just a couple school districts, that this is the reality that could be the entire Commonwealth. Right now, it's 5 school districts saying we are going to reject President Trump's efforts to say, look, we're going to have girls are girls, guys are guys in all of our school systems, no matter what. And they're saying we're willing to forego federal funds in order to preserve that policy. And people know that if we get certain candidates in the House and for governor, we could have that again across the Commonwealth. And so people do have to vote and they have to turn out. They have to be telling their friends and neighbors. We've got new voter guides coming out. They're just about to hit the fan. You can literally go to our website now and grab your voter guide. So people should be looking at the positions of all these candidates. You go to familyfoundation.org and you just type in your address and it's going to tell you, here's the races you've got. You've got governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and you've got House of Delegates. And we've got to get low propensity voters that believe what you and I believe to turn out on a governor year. So if everybody that voted in Virginia, let's say everybody that voted for Trump last year in Virginia, if they just came out again, no question, conservative candidates would win. We just need those people. We don't have to convert hearts and minds. We actually just need to tell the people that believe, as you and I do, that this year matters greatly and that it's worth coming out. And we try to share with people that there are 2 amendments that are working their way towards our Constitution that are horrific. One is related to abortion, one is related to same sex marriage and transgenderism. Both would become realities if we don't get a House of Delegates that will block it. Virginia has sort of a 2-year process. So we're trying to help people understand what's actually at stake, whether it's in your school system or whether it's abortion with no restrictions whatsoever coming to Virginia, or transgenderism put into our Constitution. And if it goes in our Constitution, guess what? You can't undo that. You can't pass Save Girls Sports. You can't pass locker room protections for women. That's the reality.
And it's an important reality. And folks, this is high stakes stuff. You should be asking yourself a question right now. What kind of people, what kind of people even pay more money to get access to our kids to put them into this sexual slavery in our nation's capital, in the shadow of our nation's capital, in those school districts? It should raise all sorts of questions in your head. Yes, this is related to sex trafficking investigations. What do you think happens when you allow 2 people to mask what they're doing through surrogacy and the production of human beings, through these other things and shipping them off? It's happening in real time in Virginia. That's my opinion. I've been fighting this in the foster care system and stuff for decades, Victoria. And as the truth comes out about this, it's always more disgusting than anybody could possibly imagine. I just want to riff on this really quick. Folks, what was going on in Virginia right now is you have an African American woman that's going to be the next governor there, Winsome Sears. She's a lieutenant governor right there. And you have the entire media conglomerates in the world that are trying to get you to convince that a Black woman is a bigot because she stands up for women's rights in Title IX. Understand that. She would be a woman standing up for Title IX, and a Black woman that is as offended by drag shows as she is about the Governor Northam wearing blackface and Terry McAuliffe explaining that away. You understand what we're talking about? The other side are the people wearing blackface and putting that on because they think it's funny. They mock women the same way with drag shows, right? These are actual participants in that, and they try to protect it as a civil right. And you, if you're listening to this, have an opportunity to do something about it where we're winning everywhere. But it starts with you being involved locally with your family policy council. Tell them about that, Victoria. How do people come in through your front door and get involved?
Yeah, our website's the easiest, familyfoundation.org. We're also all over social media on Twitter and X and elsewhere. And folks really have an opportunity to get to know both the election arm and what we're doing in these elections. We've got 7 House races that are deeply targeted because really fundamentally it's going to all come down to a few key districts, and we're sending hundreds of thousands of dollars into those districts with commercials letting people know where the candidates stand so they can come in that way and learn a little bit about that. They really should know what our law center is doing because our law center is the one defending 3 Loudon boys that are being charged by their school district for a sexual harassment decision because they are in their own locker room complaining because there's a biological girl who videotapes them. Literally, these are the situations that we have going on in our law center, and people need to hear about those. And when they think about what, I don't know if the rest of the country's hearing about what's happening in Fairfax, where we literally have a school system being found out for sending young girls from their school system to an abortion center with no parent anywhere in the picture. That's against Virginia law, and it's finally coming to light. But these are the kind of issues that we're working on and that people are beginning to become exposed to through our organization. But that situation in Fairfax, in one county in Virginia, becomes the norm across Virginia if we elect the wrong candidates and have that constitutional amendment moving forward. So we just have to really understand these things. So people getting to know us and then getting their voter guide is another critical thing they can do right there on that website.
So we need you to plug in. We need you to get involved wherever you live. We hope for those of you that are in Virginia, New Jersey, other states like that that have your governor races that you step up. But it's important for everybody to step up this year because you all have school boards, you all have city council, everybody listening to my voice, and Victoria's has other elections. And as the master said, you are Caesar. That is your government. Did you show up? Did you participate? If you don't know that, you know what God said. He said, the master will call you, you wicked slave, right? You don't want to be called you wicked slave. If you're concerned, Victoria, you and I have talked to our friends over the years that are concerned about absentee ballots. I was involved in that. I was Speaker of the House in 2005 in Michigan. I brought in the voter ID back then, and same arguments against it. Uh, um, but it's about the integrity of the vote. And I just want to say this to people that think that absentee voting or early voting is fraudulent. I've had to investigate a lot of that stuff, and I'll tell you that only way people can use your ballot is if you don't.
That's right.
And Victoria, I wanted you to
Be
validate
your
that.
first
If I,
vote.
yeah, if I go the first day of absentee voting and I show up at my clerk's desk and say, "Give me my ballot," it's owed to me. I'm being videoed. I do that. No, funky system, no computer code, nothing can undo what I did, correct?
That's right. And in Virginia, there's a permanent absentee ballot list that you always get sent a ballot. And people, yes, this may not be the system we would like to have, but this is the system, and it is the system that our opponents use. And so we encourage people, get on that permanent absentee ballot when it comes to your house. You don't have to put it in the mail. You can walk that right in, but then you will always be reminded, hey, there's an election. Hey, this is who's on your ballot, and you'll be right aware. The other side is making sure that those permanent ballots are going to all of their folks. So we just want to encourage you, get that permanent ballot, absentee ballot, walk it in, turn it in, be your very first vote. And then that also allows us to begin seeing how we're doing. Who else do we need to target? When organizations are working, we're working directly with data. So we're working directly to find out, okay, this group hasn't voted. Let's go knock those doors. But then once you've you've done your vote, then we don't have to knock your door. We can knock another door. So it helps us be more effective.
There's a lot more that you can do than you think about, folks. And it comes when you do the simplest thing of all. You stop complaining about other people and you start fixing it. Victoria, this is what we say in AA meetings. We say, what's your side of the street look like, right? And if you haven't voted for that sidewalk bond for $110 million for your school district and you're complaining about it, that's on you, is what we're trying to say. We're empowering There are so much more Christians sitting out elections in America, Victoria. We could win California. We could win New York with finger roll layups if people participate, and we can start demonstrating that. As you hear this voice, come to the website, come and Christians Engage, come to the Family Foundation, and we need your help. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, last point here, is that the opposition has all the money and the lawyers that they need. They're not playing beanbag with us. They're bringing in full on artillery, the ACLU, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, sophisticated legal organizations that you're up against, right, Victoria?
There's no question that the other side is always good. They're outfunding us in this particular governor race in particular. I mean, is woefully outfunded. The deal is we've got to work hard, we got to work smart, and we got to raise more money. That's the reality of what politics looks like. Because I know people can be disillusioned by that, but the reality is we have the message. Our message is absolutely what is on point with Virginia parents, but the message has to get out. You have to have the ability to actually reach people where they are. And that comes in, we can literally direct target an individual so that they're getting a commercial on their Roku or on their whatever device, streaming device they have. We can direct it perfectly at them, but there has to be the funding to do that. And don't doubt that the opponents are doing that. And they have to work twice as hard because they have to convince Virginians that they actually care about the things that are kitchen table issues, not just sexualizing our kids. And that actually is a very high bar. So we should not actually even require as much money because we're so common sense. And they're literally sending out memos in their party about what words not to use because they trigger normal people. They literally have a vocabulary now that we all know is so ridiculous that when normal people hear it, we go, yeah, we're not interested in that. And so you wouldn't even think we need the same amount of money, but we definitely have to compete to get the truth out there to the voters. Our governor candidate, Abigail Spanberger on the Democrat side, refuses to answer all sorts of questions. She's not speaking to most of the controversies that are out there. So when these things in Northern Virginia happen, she really is not addressing them. And we know she has votes on these issues. So we're actually, things like our voter guides, things like our door hangers, we're letting people know where she's not speaking, she's already spoken with a vote in DC. She is a DC insider. And so you can make clear contrasting choices to figure out what does Winsome Sears believe on one side and what does Abigail Spanberger believe, despite the sort of silence that seems to be happening around these trans issues in particular. When Governor Youngkin issued these great new guidelines, when he fixed everything, she had a very negative statement that was made about that. Voters need to know what are the differences between the candidates so they can make good choices.
Well, these are disqualifying times for not just a handful of candidates, but I want to update our audience right now as we head out that Mayor Pete, actually I'll go with him last. Rahm Emanuel and Gavin Newsom have started using our talking points in the last month, Victoria Cobb's talking points. So those of you that are auditing this show to make sure that you're keeping us on your hate lists, Mayor Pete, Rahm Emanuel, and Gavin Newsom, we're very grateful. We're not proud. We don't like Pride Month. Pride is not a Christian attribute. But we do want to say on the end of this show, we're so grateful for them following J.K. Rowling's, Martina Navratilova, and others that have joined us over the last few years. Victoria, I see your smile now. Folks, that's who's on our side. Everybody. Mayor Pete, whatever lifestyle he's chosen, we make sense to him now. And it's time for us to spike the football in Virginia. Let them know that this nonsense is disqualifying, not something that they can mask or hide with fancy words anymore. The whole idea was fancy words like the serpent used in the garden would work. We don't want that in our politics. Victoria, it has been incredible to be with you. I know that we're fixing for an amazing demonstration of just really the body of Christ coming together and participating along with our friends of the Jewish faith, the Islamic faith, people of no faith at all, but just Jesus already imprinted on their heart what's right and wrong in their virtues. And it's such a privilege to have you on. So we can help you in Virginia and as we head to really making sure that our gains hold through this next year. Thank you, Victoria.
Thanks for having me.